be consistent, keep doing what you're doing. Again, you got to adjust fire, but like a lot of people who get into real estate or want to get into real estate, they're not consistent with what they do. It's a good idea,
Mhm.
but you got to take the actionable steps every single day and build your tribe of people that they're going to be able to help you take you the long run. So this is a team sport. I don't care whether you're doing a short-term rental or an apartment building, there is a team that gets you across the finish line. And you've got to plan for the marathon, not the sprint. And I think that's what we're in right now. Is everybody's sprinting right now and nobody's planning for the marathon that you got to be in.
This is the Fit Investor Podcast, where we talk about how to live a more holistic life of being fit, not only financially, but physically and faithfully. We'll be joined by experts in all these areas to share their experiences and actionable and practical tips so that you can be a fit investor too. So now let's join our hosts, Cale Delaney and Brenna Carls. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Fit Investor. I am your host, Cale Delaney, and we're here with Brenna, 6 degrees of Brenna Carls. And our guest today is Joe Danza. And Joe is a founder of CEO of Simplified Real Estate Investments, LLC. He's got over 14 years of real estate experience, the owner of multiple real estate companies along the East Coast. He's been in real estate since he was a child, including working as a property manager in his parents' real estate business. Watching them tirelessly work, he saw the benefits of real estate and knew at an early age that real estate could provide generational wealth and the path towards achieving one's financial goals if done correctly. He also serves as an Army Reserve Chaplain and IT program manager for the Navy. And he's an avid runner, enjoys traveling to new places, and he resides in the suburbs of Washington, D.C. With that, Mr. Joe, welcome to the Fit Investor.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, this has been quite a ride. And, through the different cycles of the market, I guess I'd like to say, I think we've seen a lot in the last couple of years. And it's all about buying and selling in the right times of the market and holding. And we've been pretty successful throughout the years. And so I'm happy to be here to share my story and to help where I can.
Yeah. So take us back. In your bio, you touched on that you worked with your parents and their real estate business, and that kind of inspired you. So why don't you start there? Tell us a little bit about that, what your parents did and how that worked out.
Yeah. So my parents, so they were in the Army. My dad was enlisted. My dad's last duty station, he bought real estate and it was like 75 units that they bought. And it was a family business. And so that meant every Saturday and Sunday, when we were not in school as kids, we were out there turning units, painting, and even in the evenings as a teenager, I would go out and lease apartments. So it was truly a family business. At the time, I didn't understand it. It was probably more resentful duties and obligations of the household. They were in typical chores that I had as a kid growing up. It was the business was our chores. And growing up, I was a big fan of real estate. And then when you start working a W-2 job, you start to realize your time is much more valuable. You are replaceable. You're disposable. They will replace you before you leave your seat. If you die tomorrow, they'll replace you. They'll give you a minute maybe, but they will have your job out on the street advertised and they will quickly replace you. And so now, we're trading our time for real estate, and real estate has just been very lucrative for us. It's not been a get rich quick that many folks think. We've been doing this for 15 years. I've been buying real estate since I was 21. And a lot of the success has been in the last 5 years or so. It's been a season of buying and holding. And that's really what it is. It's properties that we purchased back in 2008 when the market collapsed. It was supposed to have been our first flip. It was our first flop, and we turned lemons into lemonade by turning it into a long-term rental. And where cash flows, that property does $700 a door today in this market. And where do you see that? There's not very many places where you see $700 a door. And so a lot of the properties that we hold, we've purchased 10, 15 years ago. And then we have a good portfolio that we purchased in the last 5 years, and they still cash flow significantly. It's all about finding the right strategy for the right market and connecting with the right folks to help you execute that strategy. And that's been our story. And I'm a big advocate of it's not so many, it doesn't matter about how many doors you purchase, it's what you make off each of those doors. And I know a lot of investors who focus on, you got to get that 1,500 and 1,500 doors, 3,000 doors. And my question to them always is, how much are you making off each of those doors? How much do you own in that deal? Because it really doesn't matter at the end of the day how many doors you have. It is what's in your bank account is what matters. And we're all trading our time for real estate. For we want that extra time with our family and our friends, because at the end of the day, that's all that really matters. Like, you can't take your real estate with you when you die, and you can't take your job with you when you die. It is, you're trading for time, really.
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. And a lot of great things I want to touch on in there. You know, and the last thing you mentioned there about the number of doors. Yeah, I always find that kind of a funny one, especially in the short-term rental space, because it's very skewed, right?
Oh,
Because
yeah.
like my 10 doors, short-term rental doors, probably makes more than 100 long-term rental doors.
Absolutely.
You know, but yeah, you go around and say, oh, I got 10 doors. Yeah, big whoop.
Yeah.
I think, I don't know if he coined it, Luke Carl with the short-term shop, I think he calls it like the door disease. Don't get trapped in that door disease and just wanting to have a big number to impress people. Just like you
Yeah.
said, it's all about what do they actually make? What do they actually perform?
Yeah.
I thought that's funny you brought that up. But I want to go back again to the
Okay.
beginning, talking about your working in the business, because you said, and I think you hear it from a lot of people who, whether it's in real estate or whatever, if they're forced into working in a family business, it oftentimes becomes, like you said, a bit of maybe resentment, or it's just the obligation, and it can sometimes push people away from that actual thing instead of drawing them towards it. So what do you think actually ended up drawing you towards it, or was that something that came later on in life?
It came later on in life. I started buying real estate while I was working for my parents, and because I saw it as a good opportunity. But the market changed, it tanked, and I became a landlord, and I didn't want to become a landlord. It wasn't in the cards. It was supposed to have been like a quick flip and flip. It was a sell. We purchased it for $40,000, and we were going to sell it for 120, and the market just tanked out. I became a landlord overnight, not in the game plan. It is I think it took a long time. Like, it took me 10 years of working in the government to realize I am a bean counter. They don't care about me at the end of the day. It was, I think, one of the wake up calls I had was, I was getting ready to leave for another job. And anybody who works in the government knows it takes a long time to fill a job in the government. You're probably going to go old and gray before they fill it. And I was just blown away with how quickly they had my job out on the street. It was like the next day after I told them I had accepted another position. And it showed like how little value I brought to the table, right? They tell you how great you are when you're working in the job, but then when you give them your 2 weeks notice to go after a promotion or the next step, you find out how quickly you're replaceable. And I think that's what I learned through my government time was, yes, you might be the rock star working your W-2 job, helping them accomplish their mission and their objectives, but what are you doing for yourself to get further ahead? And that's when I really had that light bulb moment that, what am I doing with my life? And I'm going to give you 40 hours or more, because I mean, in government, we probably work a little bit more than 40 a week, even though most people think we don't. And I'm trading you my time, really. And I have nothing to show for it besides maybe a couple extra $1,000 for the next step. And so I started looking, what am I going to do? I wasn't sure if real estate really was going to be the step that we were going down, but it ended up being that step. It made the most sense. It is one of the, when you search for wealth, you search for time saves on Google, real estate comes up. And granted, we've had a big explosion of that. Everybody wants to be that short-term rental owner or that landlord. I kind of question whether most people will survive. This is, I like to call it like the boom. And I'm interested to see where the cards will fall once the boom is over. How many people will throw their properties back up on the market, because it is very difficult to be a landlord. And especially for the short-term rentals, now you're in the hospitality industry, and people can only handle so much after so long while you're still juggling your jobs too. I just built a team with me. That's the difference. Like, most people run this by themselves, and I'm like, good for you. But I have people who answer the phones, who answer the service calls that come in, and who take care of all those things for me. So it is not 24/7 in my living real estate. I might live it in the deal world, but not in the day-to-day operations of things. So I know I went in a circle with that, but hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, no, again, lots of good stuff I want to dig into.
Yeah.
The I mean, the W-2 thing, same experience as you. And I think a lot of people eventually have that experience to some degree. And I worked in a construction for a large contractor for 15 years. And the eye opener for me always was that construction, of course, one of the most dangerous industries out there, fatalities. And the company that I work for, there were a couple fatalities. And I remember just, I say this with deference, not to be disrespectful at all, but it's just like you said, even when somebody dies, you literally do get a minute, more or less, of silence, and then back to business. Right. Yeah. And same thing, if somebody leaves or is fired or quits or whatever, it's, back to business. Nothing against the W-2 world. It has its place for a lot of people. And that's what a lot of people need, frankly, is that stability. And for me, that's what I needed for those several years of my life until I think I was ready to make the transition. But it doesn't work for everybody. But you just got to keep in mind that, like you said, it's when you are working in that W-2 capacity, you're always working for somebody else. You're always building somebody else's business instead of your own. And can you live a decent life off it? Yeah, absolutely. You can do that. But you are, at the end of the day, going to be trading your time and beholden to somebody else. So it's just a matter of looking at what your goals are and what you really want your life to look like. And I want to dig into what you just brought up, though, about you built your team alongside with you, because for me, that's where I need to get. I'm still that person running it by myself. So why don't you take us through that? Like, how did that genesis, and what resources, maybe some pitfalls along the way?
Yeah, it has not been overnight. We're about 20 strong now, and we're all over the place, from New York to the Emerald Coast of Florida. We're all over the place, and we're out in Missouri too. And we have a lot of great property managers that help us oversee the on-ground day-to-day operations, because we're just not there, and there's no way possible to manage all the day-to-day stuff that we have going on. And then we have for our short-term rentals, we have cleaners that help us run the properties. We have virtual assistants that help us with we use like different CRM tools. And so as tickets come in, they are answering service tickets, they're answering guest inquiries, they are taking those phone calls for us. We have them on different shifts. We have some people in the US that answer phone calls for us, and then we have some of it offshore. So it's amazing to see what, I think COVID really helped us really figure out what are better ways to outsource jobs, because we are now in this remote environment. And there are certain jobs that we found in the US that they were difficult to fill. Not many people were willing to work for those types of jobs. Nobody wants to be in telemarketing services, because we do a lot of sales. Like, we do a lot of cold calling for part of our business. And some of it's just easier to outsource. And we have a team that they send text messages to homeowners, to apartment building owners. They are using our telecommunication systems to really at least start that initial conversation for us. And then they lead into basically our acquisition team, where they will go and follow up with the owners to see what is it going to take to purchase the property. Like, how much do you want? What is the condition of the property? Getting all those details for us. And then I have an underwriter that sits there. Once we know that this is a possible deal, whether it's a short-term rental or an apartment building, they're looking at the deal for me. And then I get the final eyes on whether we think the deal is viable or not. Like, they are screening all of that for us. But it took a long time to find those people to do all of this. And they're all over the world. My top underwriter is in India, and he does a phenomenal job. And you're finding talent where it's really the hidden places of it, and you're leveraging them to help build your business. You're incentivizing them as they come along the way with you, and building them into the company too, looking at their strengths and their weaknesses. Like, where else can they fit into the company as well as you adjust your company? And so it's been a lot of work figuring out who are the right fits. Some days we pull our hair out over whether we made the right hires. Some days we're extremely thrilled with the team that we have. It just depends. And I tell everybody, entrepreneurship is not for the faint of heart. Everybody wants to be one until you're one, because there are lots and lots of bills. It's not pretty. There's lots of days where, I'm not sure if it was the greatest decision to be an entrepreneur, because it's a lot of responsibility. When you build a team, a lot of these people, their livelihoods count on it. And we have conversations with our teammates where they will tell me this, they're so thankful for their jobs. They rely on this income, and it puts pressure on you. At the end of the day, when you are looking at revenue and you're looking at paying bills, you have a sense of responsibility to these people who have entrusted you with their W-2 job. And so it's like I tell everybody, it's not for everybody. Some people are just meant to work W-2 jobs, and there's nothing wrong with it, because you are chained to your business. I don't ever have a day off. We're constantly working all the time. Wherever I travel, I'm checking emails, I'm checking messages. I still have to check with my team. Maybe I'm not having that direct interface with our customers, but I have some responsibility, some obligation to somebody that I have to answer to. And you build the right team, the company will run itself, but you still have to steer the ship. And so that's where we're at. We're still growing, and it still takes a lot of time and nurturing to build the team. And I'm probably fairly lucky comparing to most where we're at in our journey.
I feel like I just heard a recording of myself in a different person's voice. I've said the exact same thing. When you say it was tough for you to find like the right people, were you meaning that like through the interview process, you just wanted the right fit? Or do you mean like you'd hire people and they just didn't turn out to be good at the job? Or what did you mean by that? And then also you mentioned your top guy underwriter was in India. Did you go through sources like VA companies and things like that? Or where did you scour to find actually good people and to keep them and have them produce for your company?
Yeah, no, those are really good questions. So I think it's all the above, right? So sometimes we hire the wrong people, and sometimes we hire the right people. It's you just don't know what you're getting sometimes. And we've been pretty good we'll ask for products to be done for us before we hire. We'll ask for clips if they're a social media person. So I've got 2 social media people. We'll ask to see their work. We'll pay them to do clips to see what their capabilities are. And then sometimes when we don't hire the right people, we look at their skill sets and say, like, where else can we stick them? Because they might be a really good person, or can we train them? It's not always about, do you have the right skill sets at the time? It is, are you willing to learn? Are you willing to give this a shot? And can we mold you into what we need you to be and grow you with the company? And I would say probably at least 2 or 3 of our teammates, we've been fortunate enough where they're not quite doing what they were hired to do, but they needed a job, and we were willing to give them the work, and they were willing to learn. And, is it a little bit more work with us? Training them yes, but you build loyalty with them. And those folks will work for you, and what they go through every single day for us, and they'll move mountains for us. Yeah. And we're very fortunate. So I think you find that careful balance of talent, motivation, the willingness to learn, and then I think you'll be okay as you're searching. Like for recruiting purposes, it's been everywhere. We do a lot of word of mouth. We have found that doing a blast for a hiring usually doesn't work. We get everybody and their brother applying for the jobs, a lot of people who aren't even qualified. So we just use our network of folks. Like everybody that we've hired, we ask before we go out on the street, who do you know might be interested in this job? And if you're not interested, do you have the skill sets to become this? Or basically the tools, if we give you these tools, can you become this? And we pay for people to go to school. We pay for training. We're giving our team the tools to be successful, and hopefully they don't leave. Granted, they might leave, which is fine. And they've built their resume along the way. But we're hoping by creating the roles, building like team leads, supervisory positions, like we're building a future for them with the company as we grow as well. So it's a two-way street. And I look at my W-2 experience, helping them understand like where they fit into the cogwheel. A lot of times people don't understand where they fit into the cogwheel. And then a lot of times people don't understand what their future looks like besides this is just a paycheck. And so I probably spend a lot of time figuring out like what is the future for these folks. and like pushing people at the same time. Like maybe you didn't like doing this today, but we're going to do it. And metrics, like I'm big on metrics. And some people are apprehensive towards metrics. I like to use them to measure success, whether we actually hit them or not. We're not in the life and death business. Like we hit them, great. If not, let's figure out next week how we're going to hit them. And so that's been my mantra with things as we've been growing.
So you left something out. So you were talking about how your employees, like they work their heart and soul into the business and they do really well. The difference is they work for somebody in a company that they believe in. So you won't see people giving their heart and soul to something they don't believe in. And if they didn't believe in your company, so that kind of speaks to your leadership and the other leaders that you've hired into your company, because if they didn't believe in it, they just go somewhere else and find a job that pays the same amount, because a W-2 job is a W-2 job at the end of the day. If they're just looking to make their mortgage payments and help out with their kids and family, then I could go and find the same paying job as anybody else. So it does speak to your company that I think that's why some people give like their heart and soul, because they believe in the vision that you have and how you guys lead as a company. And so I think that's important to point out. And then I don't know where, because the way you the way you run your business, the way I run my business, yeah, they're W-2 employees, but it's totally different than like y'all were talking about your experiences. I have the same experiences. I've said on a different podcast that my husband's grandfather that he's really close to had a stroke. He was going into the hospital and we were like rushing to go to the hospital. And my manager called me and asked, hey, I'm like, keep in mind, I was like the top producer for the East Coast. And they were like, hey, I know you're heading to the hospital, but you didn't send in your projections for next month. And I'm like, are you kidding me? And I was like, no, I sure didn't. And you're not getting them today. And I like hung up. So I wonder where there's that line, right? Where you care about your employees. We have a smaller company, but we care about our employees. For example, one of my employees, one of their family members went into the hospital and they're like, I got some work to do. And then I'll head to the hospital. And I'm like, no, you need to go now because you can't get life back. We'll cover whatever you have to do. But then I wonder where that line is where you get so big as a corporate company where it's you have to, because you're trying to keep that, all you care about is that line, that bottom line. And then you train all these people below you. It's the same thing. And then like emotions and empathy go out the water. They don't care what you have to do. So I really wonder where that line is, or if there is a way for like companies to become big and them still have that mentality.
Yeah, I think that's a very hard line. And I think when you're small like this, you get to know everybody on a one-on-one basis. Like I know every employee from the time that, like if if they've had a kid, to a financial issue, to a family emergency, it's like we put you on PTO. That is just the way it goes. It's what we do is not life and death. I've worked the jobs. I've been in the military where it is life and death. And what we do in this real estate world, nobody's going to go hungry. Nobody's going to die today. So it's about the people. Like the people are what keep everything rolling. How the big companies do it, I think you have to hire the right leaders in the positions where they are instilling those values, the same values that you have. And that's how you do it. You may not know all of your employees by name, but hopefully you've hired the right leaders where they know their employees by name and they're just not another person sitting in a seat. But it does happen in those large companies, and whether we aspire to be something like that, I don't know.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask one thing, because you mentioned earlier about incentivizing and building them into the business. Beyond what we've talked about here just now in terms of sharing the vision and where they fit into the business and what their future is there anything else that you do in terms of incentivizing or
yeah, we pay them. All right. Cold hard cash is the way to my heart, and it is the way to the heart of most of any employee, right? And so it's making sure that they're paid on time consistently. A lot of entrepreneurs forget that. And then we also give pay raises, right? You're just not in these jobs to collect the same salary you collected 5 years ago. That's just not how we work. We look at it every single year, and we offer bonuses too. If you do really well, you're getting a bonus. It's if we do well, you do well. is the motto with that. And we understand that there's cost of living and everybody needs a pay raise. And whether you're working in the US, our US team, they have to get pay raises. Just our teams in the Philippines or in India, everybody's got to get a pay raise because everything goes up everywhere. And it's I think one of the things that you always have to consider. And I think we're probably a little guilty at this, but when there is a family emergency or there's an illness, a lot of these employees, because they're in different countries, they've never had PTO, but we have that luxury in the US. Mm-hmm. And so we put these people on PTO. We advance their salaries right away because we know a lot of them live paid paycheck to paycheck. And I think we forget that in the US. I think that's one of the things that, with this company, even though people are spread out, we get to see these different perspectives of how grateful people are for PTO. Most people in the US could care less about PTO. It just blows my mind. People in the US assume it's an entitlement, it's a right to their jobs. These people who work, I've had people tell me that they're going to work from the hospital, and I'm like, no, you're not. Like, exactly. You are off. We're going to be fine without you this week. Get better, and here's your salary so that your family can eat this week. So it's like we realize people are the cogs in the wheel, and the wheel has to keep going. We've got to take care of our people.
Yeah. I think the other thing with PTO and W-2s and just this culture in the US, and I think many Western cultures in general, is like there's almost a pride that we have in mm-hmm. how much we work and how little vacation we take. And for companies that offer to be able to cash in your PTO, most people end up doing that. They'd rather get the cash instead of the paid time off. But again, I just remember my career, we never got a tremendous amount of vacation, but it was like whenever you took a vacation, like you'd get back and you'd almost be
renewed.
Well, no, because that job was the kind of job that you could never really disconnect from. But but no, it was like you would almost be in a playful way, but in a serious, there's always some truth to it, ridiculed, right? For, oh, look at you going on vacation, or, oh man, how many vacation days do you have? Geez, weren't you just on vacation like 9 months ago? It was just always that kind of thing. And I always just kept that in the back of my mind. I was like, man, this is so ridiculous. Like, why do we do this to ourselves? Why are we so prideful? And I'm still like this too. It's a character thing here, but why is it so important to be the hardest working, or the person who stays the latest, or the person who takes the least amount of vacation days? We literally kill ourselves working when so many places around the world have a completely flipped mentality. They're working to live instead of living to work. And it's just something that still eats me to this day, even when I don't maybe need to be working. I find myself doing it because I feel guilty if I'm not. I'm like, gosh.
Oh yeah.
I think I've read somewhere it's honestly like one of those like mental coping mechanisms, like an addiction, right? So like people, if they get stressed, they can stress eat. Or I found 7 years ago, if I got stressed, I would go and like shop or something. And I'm like, well, that's a really bad habit that I need to break. But I'm the same way. If I'm like, okay, I've got to just take some time for myself and not work, and I'll sit there on the couch or something, and I'm like, I'm going to find a good TV show to watch, and then I sit there for like 10 minutes. I'm like, okay, I can't do this. And I think I don't know if it goes back to the American dream, like our parents and their parents, how they worked. Like, you've got to work hard for what you want. If you work hard, you'll have what you want. Like when the American dream came out, and everybody, houses were getting cars, houses were getting televisions, and it was because they were working for that American dream, and it was instilled in people. Then I think it's our generation, right? So I'm intrigued to see what the next two generations come out with, because we were taught by those generations. And so working hard to get where you want, it was instilled in us. And that's the only way. And then so now with us being successful, okay, you've been successful. You get to this level. What happens now? You've hit this. And now it's still ingrained in your mind. Now I have to hit this. Now I have to work even harder to hit this. And, oh, business is slow right now in real estate. If I work hard enough, it's going to pay off. And to a point, I think that's right. But at the same time, it can become like that coping mechanism of, overworking yourself to be that person on top. And I think you have to take a step back and be like, I did this in the beginning to have a life and to be with my family and to be able to see my kids grow up or what have you.
Yeah.
What I'm doing right now, is that helping it or is that actually hurting it?
Yeah.
Yeah. And maybe we can use this as a transition into the next topic here, but it reminded me of actually this morning in one of the devotions I was reading. This verse came up yesterday too, but then it came up this morning. But it's in Proverbs 23:4. Don't wear yourself out trying to get rich. Be wise enough to know when to quit. Right.
Yeah.
And tell me about it. I think about this a lot, man. When is enough?
Yeah.
So it's a hard question to answer for ourselves, and it's a convicting question.
Hey guys, it's Brenna Carl, CEO and co-founder of The Mortgage Shop. When I'm not spending my time searching for the best pizza in town, working out, well, because of pizza, or fighting sharks as Kale likes to say, I spend my time educating clients on the best investment products that will help them build generational wealth and making sure their loan process is as smooth as warm butter on a piece of toast. Call us today to get started with your investment journey at 800-816-7982 or, to talk more about pizza. Talk to you soon.
Why don't we move into the faith topic? I know you're Army Reserve Chaplain. Why don't you take us through your faith journey, and then we can go from there.
Yeah. So I just got out of the Army as an Army chaplain. So my real estate replaced the income. And so that was a big change this year. Like, it happened probably a couple weeks ago. And so it's been a change. I had an amazing opportunity to really, in the Army, bring faith to soldiers, to share my faith with soldiers. It is something that is very unique in my company. A lot of my employees are Christian. And so it is, I will get messages asking for prayers, or they will tell me that the job is their answer to their prayers. So it's a very unique situation that I've gotten to be in. I think because of my faith, it's probably like I handle things a little bit more differently than most folks. Like, I've watched my counterparts who run their companies, I'd say ride people. Granted, I ride people too. Like, we're about results, right? But there's a difference when somebody says, I'm doing my best. And then that's when you like pump the brakes and then you really reevaluate things. It's like my time in the military. I had a big team of people. And it was just, it was an amazing learning experience. I would never trade my time for being in the military for anything. It just, I think it instilled a lot. It laid a good foundation for me. I'm just a firm believer that God puts you in the path where you're in, whether it's good or bad. It's in preparation for the next stage in life. And it lays that foundation so you can handle what's ahead for you. I've had my ups and downs in life. This company has had its ups and downs, but it prepares you for what lies ahead. So I'm a firm believer of, we had 10 years of no growth. It was hard, those 10 years, but it prepared us for the season of growth. And so that's where we're at with our company.
And what about you personally? Did you grow up in a Christian household or?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Catholic. We grew up Catholic. And then I didn't want to become a priest because I thought I was going to become a priest. That's a long story. That's a different entire podcast right there. But I ended up becoming a Protestant chaplain. And so I left the Catholic Church to become a non-denominational chaplain. And by doing that, I had a further reach. And it was just, I don't know how to describe it. It's very different. Like, the bond that I have with business partners, with friends who are of the faith, it's so much different from the people I engaged with who have no connection with God, no relationship with God. It's a very interesting dynamics to watch and observe. It's like I refer to folks as part of my tribe, and those people who are in my tribe are usually of the ones who share some sort of faith belief, and it's just nice. It's like we can sit and we can talk. And my prayer a lot of times is, please don't let me go bankrupt, God. That is my answer. That's my prayer a lot of times when we are doing the bigger deals. And it's not like we're planning for expansion and we believe we're ready. It's always that prayer, please don't let me go bankrupt. But then you go to like the tribe I have, and it's nice to be able to confide in them. And the growth that we're going through, but also the scariness, and to actually be able to pray with them. It's just a different, unique bond that I have. And it's the fellowship. It's what makes you stronger as an entrepreneur at the end of the day. I guess everybody has their own thing, but for me, like faith is really a big piece of it.
Yeah. So you mentioned that you grew up in a Catholic household, but then later on you moved into Christianity. What was it that spurred that transition?
So to become a chaplain, you either had to become a priest or you could become a non-denominational pastor or a Presbyterian or a Baptist. I did not want to become a Catholic priest. I thought I would find the right wife and the kids to go with it. I'm still single, and I left the Catholic Church to become. It was a transition, right? It's like you take Catholicism, the beliefs are completely different from Christianity, but Catholicism falls under the umbrella of Christianity. I studied it for so long. It's wild. And I think I just consider it like all these different faiths, they're all different paths that lead to one place. And yes, you can say Catholicism is better than Christianity or Presbyterian or Baptist. I don't think it really matters at the end of the day. As long as you believe in a God, I think that's all that really matters at the end of the day. And your convictions and your beliefs, they come from those communities. And again, that's like a huge debate. A lot of my chaplain friends will, probably beat me with a stick for saying that it doesn't matter, because they all believe it does matter. I think as a chaplain, I learned while your faith is very important, it doesn't matter to the individual soldier who's going through a crisis at that time. I spent a lot of time with the soldiers. I had soldiers from different backgrounds. They lived different assignments that I had. And it's really being that representation, like walking through their crisis with them. And you are that representation of God. And so it doesn't matter what faith background you are. But again, I'm going off in different tangents. So.
Yeah, I think to clarify, at least from my perspective, in terms of like denominations and things of that nature, I would agree. I don't think the denomination really matters. I hear the phrase majoring in the minor, right? And the denominations are separated typically over
very minor things.
Relatively minor differences in theology. But at the end of the day, the core principle, the core belief is belief in Jesus Christ as our Lord and Savior, that he is the Son of God. As long as that is the core belief, then the specific denomination that you may be a part of or whatever is, like I said, majoring in the minor, right?
Yeah.
And it's also like human developed, right? The Bible says to truly know me and to accept, like you said, accept me as your Lord and Savior means you're saved. And that's that your relationship between God is between you and God. And it's not, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't remember seeing in the Bible where it says if you're not Baptist, you're not saved. Or if you're not Catholic, you're not saved. Now, I know Catholics have everybody has their own beliefs, but from the beginning of time, but it never said those specific words. And so I feel it says what is it, 2 or 3 are gathered in my name, I'm there. And I've always thought that there are certain things that I do believe agree with certain denominations versus others, but I think there's some people that just get so serious about it. And it's the same God.
Yeah, it's good to live in this world, is what I tell them. But again, if you talk to a real theologian, you probably get crucified over that.
I had a theology class in college, and me and that professor went at it all the time. But I was like one of his favorite students because I think I was the only one that participated. But it's because I disagreed with most everything he said. But he enjoyed it because I guess it challenged him, and he really did hearing other people's thoughts, which you don't. Sometimes those teachers won't hear any opinions at all. But it is neat because I do think you can grow in knowledge from it. But at the same time, I think there's that line of just because you believe that doesn't mean that's right or that's 100% and you have to follow that. So I think it's cool that you went your own way because you still wanted to teach people about God and you went after it instead of letting it deter you and just not doing it at all.
Yeah. It was a great path. Lasted. It was a season, as I'd like
now,
to
on
say.
A practical question, this is totally different. You're in the military. Military benefits are really nice. And insurance. And so when you got out of it, did you feel the sting of not having that very nice health insurance anymore? Did you find good health insurance? Because we, as being self-employed, my husband was in the government, now he's out, and we got the same plan but we're self-employed, so we're paying a lot of money for it. However, I know we missed that, so I wanted to ask you your opinion on that.
So I haven't really felt the effects of losing benefits because I still have my federal gig. And
Okay.
I'm still like using it to buy more properties. And then at some point we'll kick it to the curb. But for right now, like I've always worked 2 jobs. So this is the first time in my life where I'm not working 2 jobs. I'm working a business, which is a job, and still working my federal job. So I haven't felt the effects of benefits, but I'm sure at some point, and at some point, it's really not that bad. Like I've been looking at what it costs for benefits. Do you really want to pay it? Probably not. But
No.
I have friends across the border in Canada. They don't pay for it, but the benefits aren't so great. The medical care isn't so great. So I'm happy to pay for it as long as it's good. It's good care. And
I'm the same way, but I still don't like it.
You bring up a very practical thing, and not to belabor this point here, but there are lots of options out there outside of your standard health insurance, and especially for Christians. There's several, they call them Christian health sharing ministries.
Yeah.
They basically work the same as insurance, but it's not technically insurance. But that's what I do.
I need to look into that. I know you said that before, but I haven't looked into it.
They're much more cost effective than your standard health insurance companies out there. And frankly, the benefits are just the same, if not better. There might be a little bit more hoops to jump through just because a lot of doctors might not be familiar with them. So when you first go and you mention it, they might not know what you're talking about. You may need to get them connected and explain it a little bit. But for the most part, these companies have their networks of doctors as well that are well aware of the situation and all that. But for a family of 5, for medical, vision, and dental, I pay $800 a month.
What?
Yeah, and that's with, there's no deductible.
There's no deductible.
Yeah, there's no deductible. A doctor's visit is like $35.
Can you send me that information?
Yeah, I know.
About renewal times.
$55. A trip to the ER is $250, and they cover the same stuff as everything else. Frankly, it's actually better than the health insurance plan that I was getting when I was working my W-2, and
wow,
it's costing a lot more. So yeah, there's several. Just Google Christian health sharing ministries, and you'll get a whole list of them. There's several out there. But I think it's an excellent alternative to regular health insurance. Again, much more cost effective and similar, if not better, benefits. From a practical standpoint, that's a great way your faith can play a part.
You said, what is it? Christian
health sharing ministries.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
I like several that offer it. But since we're running towards the end here, I want to transition into the fitness category. So you touched on in your bio, you're an avid runner, but what's your fitness journey look like? Like, when did fitness become important for you, and why?
So that really became important when I joined the military, but I've just kept it since I've gotten out. It helps keep me balanced. Things could be, you could be having a bad day and you go for a run, and it's amazing, like the perspective that you can get by stepping away and running. And then it also gives me like the boost that I need to go the extra mile too. Some days everybody thinks it's amazing owning your own business. It really isn't. I hate to break it to you. There's a lot of days I don't want to do a lot of things, but running helps with that. It helps me push through the things that I don't want to do, and it helps me feel like I can do the things that I don't think I can do. Running is very important, and it helps keep me balanced. I get cranky after a while, and I'm like, before I have a team huddle, I might go exercise. I'm like, I don't want to take it out on anybody if I'm cranky that day. and so it definitely helps keep me balanced.
It also helps you not to think about other things because you have to concentrate on breathing or you'll die. So there's that.
Yeah, I use my runs to be very productive. Like I go through my list.
Really, I love running, but it's because I don't like. I like my mind goes everywhere. I'm like, oh, look at the birds. Oh, I wonder what bird is in seed. Like my whole, like, and it's just time for me where I don't have, like you said, owning your business isn't all rainbows and sprinkles. You have to answer to everybody, even though you're the owner. You have somebody to answer to because you have to help them. And so it's like that one moment where you're just like by yourself and you can think of anything you want.
That is true. That is true. Yeah, 100%.
So what's your daily runner, or what's your routine look like?
Depending on whether I'm traveling or not, it dictates whether I'm running outside or not. But I try to run as much as I can because it is what keeps me balanced. It's I spend a lot of time traveling right now. We went through a lot of growth this year, and so it's just really making sure everything is going smoothly. And I just didn't expect to be on the road this much, but it's like I'm trying to get better with carving out that time to like really exercise more because traveling does wear you down. I never thought traveling would wear you down this much. Like when you vacation, it's not bad, but when you're traveling for work,
Oh, yeah.
it really does wear you down after a while.
On average, how many miles do you run per week?
I would say probably maybe 20 miles a week. Like I push. Like I used to do the Army 10 miler, and I used to be pretty crazy with my running. Training for half marathons, I was pretty crazy like that. But then you realize it's really not good for your knees after a while.
I was about to ask, do you have like knee problems or?
No, not
I
yet.
used to never ask these questions, and now that I'm older, I'm like, that's my first question. I'm like, where's your aches and pains at?
Yeah, don't run long distance like that. That it's cool to say that you run a marathon or half marathon, but don't make it a habit because it will catch up to you.
I got up to a 10K and my knees felt like they were going to fall off. And then
Yeah.
I sat there for a little while and they stopped hurting. But I'm like, at some point, I feel like as you get older, somehow it's going to hurt you to run like that.
It will. I do have aches, and I'm
Okay.
that crazy person who will jump on the plane to go run with somebody else in a
Yeah.
different city.
When somebody's, oh yeah, I run this, I'm an avid marathon runner. I don't have any aches and pains. I'm like, you're lying. There's no way. Unless you're just somehow a freak of nature. You've got to have some kind of, I will sleep the wrong way and I wake up and I feel like I've pulled every muscle in my, how old are you, Joe?
I'm 36. So
Okay. So yeah, we're in the same area. So like y'all have both probably woken up, pulled the neck muscle and you don't know how. So it's at that age. That's why I always ask what kind of pains you feel.
Oh yeah, I feel the military was not good.
Let me ask you, for moderate distance running, where let's say you're running 5 to 10 miles or something like that, like what is a good, obviously it's going to be different for different people, but in general, what is a good pace to a mile pace to target?
That depends on the person, right?
Right. Okay. So for you, but to be where it's yourself, but you're not killing yourself at that last step, right?
Yeah, I'll do 7, 8 mile per pace, but I'm not pushing it. I know guys who will do 5, 6 minute runs, and I'm like,
that's crazy.
And I'm not here to hurt myself, but they love it. It's all about the stride too, and like how far you can go. And I mean, I have some friends who are like really into it. Like I'm an amateur comparing to them, but it just depends. It just depends on the individual.
Just say, if you ask me, feeling very successful in hoofing it's probably like a 9-minute, 9:20 mile. However, my little legs, like your stride's probably boom, mine's like not fall. So yeah.
And this, again, I'm asking this stuff because again, I struggle with running. It's just, granted, I don't really run much at all. So I'm sure if I buckled down and did it for an extended period, trained, I'd get over it. And like my father was a runner, like he was a marathoner, a triathloner, duathlon, all that stuff. But can you think of one thing that helped you get past, and maybe it never was at this point, but get past that initial, not so much pain, but like just really discomfort level with running?
Suffering.
Like, I don't know. That's what
I know what you're saying. I'll let Joe answer.
No, I think it's you build up to it, right? I think it takes time. Like you're suffering until you get to that spot, and then like you're setting goals, and that helps work you past some of the pain. And then at some point, the adrenaline is like fully kicked in, and then you don't feel as bad anymore. And I think you have to also be in the right headspace for that too. You can't be like weighed down by all of your problems and expect to run the distance that you run. I can tell like when I'm feeling weighed down versus a day where things are going okay, like the distance and like how focused you are. Like it's for me, it's like a lot of things have got to fall into place for me to hit the goals. But I think you really have to build up to it. The people who go, like I've gone and run 10 miles with no training. And I can tell you, probably 6 of those miles probably sucked.
Yeah.
The first couple miles, like, I got this. And the last 6 probably were probably some of the worst miles that I've run in my life. And like I said, I think you just build up to it. It's the best way to get through that pain because it takes a while. It really does. And then
with your perseverance, you can do it. Because when COVID hit, I literally loathed running. I thought it was the stupidest thing anybody could ever do. And that's all I could do. And so I started doing it just 3 times a week. And I would run for 5 minutes, then I have to walk some. And then I got up to 10 minutes. Then I started doing, okay, let me hit a mile first before I start walking. And it sucked the whole time, but it was still doing something, getting energy out there. And I remember talking to my doctor. I'm like, I think I have asthma. And he was like, why? I was like, when I'm running, I think I need an inhaler because I feel like I'm breathing and I can't. He was like, no, you're just out of shape. I was like, oh, thank you. Okay.
Yeah,
you don't have asthma. So I found out that I was just out of shape. But then there's at some point, I don't know when it happened, but it was like you start craving running.
yeah,
It's like you start craving to go out there. And then, Kel, I know if you ever sign up to do a 5K or something, you're probably more competitive than me. And your mind will tell you to quit before your body actually has to quit. And I remember with my 5K, I was at like 8:45 or something. I've never ran that fast in my life, but I was like, there's these 2 women that were near me and I'm like, oh, there's no way in hell they're going to beat me in this 5K. And so and then I proved to myself that I could run a mile less than 9 minutes per mile. And I think it will help you get over those things. So I think you should do it at least 3 times a week.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm still not sold. I went through those 5K phases and the obstacle course, Spartan race phases. And I think the last Spartan I did was almost a 15 miler. Yeah. And I went into it with no training, no running or anything. And I did it, but it was not pleasant. And the thing that happened to me was I was surprised at actually how well or how fine I felt for the most part, but it was like I think it was honestly like the last quarter mile, of course, like one of my legs, the quads just literally locked up. Mm-hmm. And I like literally locked, like it would not bend.
Yeah.
And
or like Forrest Gump with his little things on his legs, like running, like knees not bent.
And I realized, and this was when I discovered, and I know we don't have time now, that I'll have to save that for another episode sometime, but like I didn't realize this about the power of like salt. Like I didn't realize salt for taking away cramps. And somebody gave me like a salt pill, and I was like, salt pill? Like I never even heard of a salt pill. What the heck are you talking about? And I was amazed. I was like, holy moly, like literally within seconds, less than a minute, like the cramps and stuff started going away. I was like, my goodness, this is crazy. So anyway, I take salt before my workouts now.
I know we're at the end, but Joe, where do you live at?
So I live in the suburbs of Washington, D.C. when I'm not traveling.
Okay, so it's pretty cold there in the wintertime. Do you still run outside in the wintertime or do you run inside?
I run outside.
How do you deal with, I just hate cold weather. So how do you deal with breathing in that cold weather and the chapped face? I bought this mask, guys. It looks like what's his face that was a Hannibal Lecter. I look like with his, like the mask because I bought it and I was like, I'm going to run outside in the wintertime. It's like this black mask that goes over the nose and there's a little hole for the mouth. And then there's like dots or whatever. And I was like, and I wore it once and like people just stared really, and I was like, I can't do this. So how do you deal with breathing in that cold? Cause it like burns at first. For me, you just get used to it?
You just get used to it. I run with layers and then I lose the layers as I warm up. So that's how I deal with it. And you just suck it up. It's amazing. What being in the military will help you get used to very quickly in the coldest.
I bet, yeah. So. I'll send y'all a picture of that mask and show you what it looks like. It's pretty creepy.
It might be okay now. COVID, everybody was
No,
wearing
this was like last year I got it, and I was so excited, and I put it on, and Drew was like, my husband's, you look like a serial killer. Like,
There you go. You're ready for Halloween.
yes. Okay.
All right. So now that we went off on all those tangents there, we'll bring it back in and wrap things up here since we're towards the end. So Joe, you gave a lot of really good information throughout this whole thing, but if you could break it down into 3 actionable or practical tips based on what we talked about to leave our audience with, what would you say?
I would say be consistent, keep doing what you're doing. Again, you got to adjust fire, but like a lot of people who get into real estate or want to get into real estate, they're not consistent with what they do. It's a good idea, but you got to take the actionable steps every single day. And the next thing I would say, keep doing it. Like there are a lot of days when it sucks. And I think like even in my journey, like it sucked at times where I stopped. There was a time where I stopped doing real estate because it sucked so bad. And I look back and I said, if I just pushed, I would be so much further ahead instead of using my 20s to really just stick my head in the sand, is what I'd like to say. And then I'd say build your tribe of people that they're going to be able to help you take you the long run. So this is a team sport. I don't care whether you're doing a short-term rental or an apartment building, there is a team that gets you across the finish line. Like I have lenders that I use, I have inspectors that I use, I have cleaning companies that I use. It's a whole tribe of people that gets everything done, whether you're doing apartment buildings, whether you're doing short-term rentals, long-term rentals, the BRRRR strategy, arbitraging. It's having that tribe of people that can help you get across the finish line every single day. Because if you try to do it all yourself, you will burn out and you will not like real estate because it is a very hard sport, as I like to call it. And you've got to plan for the marathon, not the sprint. And I think that's what we're in right now. Is everybody's sprinting right now and nobody's planning for the marathon that you got to be in. And doing this for like 14, 15 years now, and it's definitely a marathon and it is not a get quick overnight. And so it's going to be interesting to see how everybody finishes over the next couple of years who thought it was a good idea to get into real estate the last 2 years.
Very good.
I like that. I was hoping you'd use that running.
Yeah, there you go.
Bring it all in. Okay. So, oh, wait. How can people get in touch with you or get in contact with you?
You can send me an email at joseph@simplifiedrei.com, or you can find me on social media, Joe Danza. You'll see me on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. We post weekly tidbits about real estate, so follow along for that. Somebody actually learned something. I'm surprised, but we put out some good content apparently. So follow us along, ask questions, reach out, and we're happy to help along the way.
Okay. What's your favorite pizza from where and why?
I would say Cam's Pizza from New York. It was greasy. I love grease and pepperoni. It's just, I know you can get like the different types of pizza today, like buffalo chicken and all that good stuff. But when I was growing up, it was pepperoni.
Traditional, yeah.
I just love pepperoni and some good grease.
All right.
That sounds really good. Okay. Awesome.
Good grease to get you ready for that run. There you go.
Absolutely. You got to work it off. I really appreciate you guys having me on today.
Yeah. No,
that was awesome.
Thank you, Joe. Really gave some great advice here. And so there you go. Guys, reach out to Joe if you found value in what he brought to the table here. And stay tuned for next week's episode. See you guys later.
Thanks.